and how do we deal with this as grandparents, as families? How do we deal this with our children, with teenagers, with those singles that are alone right now? So welcome to everybody. How are you today, Dad?
Good to see you, Jacob.
Good. Great to be here. We were discussing about isolation in the scriptures before the filming, and we were thinking about the woman with the issue of blood found in Mark 5 and Luke chapter 8. And this woman had this constant blood flow, and she was considered unclean and isolated from all of society. And we know that Jesus took compassion on the isolated. There's examples of him healing lepers, and of this woman, she was healed of the issue of blood. And so this is a common occurrence in the Bible. And I know that we were talking about some other issues in the scriptures as well, people that were isolated.
Sure. Well, of course, Jeremiah was in prison. He was isolated up to his neck in muck. That was a terrible isolation. And then we have, of course, Joseph, a great hero of the faith, who was in prison for 10 years for doing the right thing, and had to make some wise choices during those times. So both of those are really important. The fact that a woman had the issue of blood. I mean, blood was a big deal in the laws of Israel. Anybody who had problems was really isolated from their neighbors. And Jesus took away all the shame right away. So when he had her express what was going on and how she'd gone to all these doctors and nobody seemed to could help her, and he was able to heal her just instantly.
Yeah.
But
wonderful. So, do you have any? What is your advice for some of the elderly, those that are maybe retired grandparents, the ones that the authorities have really said we need to all stay away from, and they need to stay isolated? What do you think about that?
Well, when you've lived a long life, being high risk is not really that exciting to even think about. You just realize that God's in control, and our days are numbered. He says that, but we don't want to be foolish either. And when the government gives us a guideline, we follow that. If it's anywhere within the realm of something that might benefit society. So I sure don't want to be responsible for giving coronavirus or any other virus to anybody else. So the isolation means that we have to do things with our time that are productive. We miss seeing our grandkids and our great-grandkids. We usually have a dinner every Sunday night for them, and they come over. We have a little Bible study and a dinner, and we haven't been able to do that. And so getting together now is, physically we just can't do it. So luckily with technology, we have Zoom, we have FaceTime, we have some technologies that allow us to get together. So for great-grandparents like my wife and I, or grandparents wanting to see their grandkids, I would try to get them in touch with technology to help them. If they don't have that, then just a phone call to them, sure, or from them might be helpful. I found that most young people today don't really answer their phone. They want to text. So we have to at least get them up to speed on that.
That's great advice. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So that's one thing. Call your grandparents and your great-grandparents specifically during this time.
Or call your kids or your great-grandkids. Make some phone calls to them, right, or get with them on social media. I think the other thing that's important for we as a couple, if you have a great marriage, being together alone is just more fun. You just enjoy that time. Joanna and I spend a lot of our time reading books together. We read them out loud, and chapters of the Bible and great literature and books on church history and missions and things that we have interest in. And that's been a real blessing. So I would definitely recommend that for people that are elderly in their homes together, to just enjoy doing the things you do together. And we do gardening together too, and we're able to go outside because we live in a place where we have a little room, so we can go out and do our gardening together, and we do that too. So it's a little more difficult when you're in a city.
Yeah.
So you're stuck kind of inside, and you can't really go outside in some cases. So you have to be a little more creative. But the best thing to do is follow what the Bible says in Galatians chapter 5, starting in verse 22. It talks about the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, goodness, self-control. All of those things we exhibit to each other in our home while we're there. It's a chance to build your family up, to build your wife up, and your relationship up by being kind to one another and thoughtful to one another, and making sure the other person's comfortable, asking them how they're feeling, giving them lots of warm hugs each day to let them know that you're there with them and you care about them. Some people worry more about these crises than others. Yeah. Some have no fear of them. Some have lots of fears. So it's good to be sensitive about that, not just dismiss the other person's fears, but comfort them.
Yeah, I was, looking at 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, and it says here that we are to uphold the weak, comfort the faint-hearted, be patient with all. And that's definitely fitting for this time, specifically if there's a spouse, as you said, that might be struggling more, or maybe even a child in the family that could be really struggling at the time, that we need to take 1 Thessalonians 5, it's starting in verse 14, it to heart with that.
Absolutely. And right now, people that are struggling, there's a weird kind of phenomena. They have a lot of extreme nightmares related to this coronavirus or China virus, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And because of that, it's important to get with the children before bedtime and to just give them comfort about how God's in control of all of our lives, and we can trust Him through these difficult times. Children don't really realize that life is a battle, and it's a battle of good and evil, and it's always going on around us. So for them to join in that battle and praying for their friends and praying for people in their school, their teachers, while they're separated from them, just gives them some real some things they can do that will help them too, by praying for others and not just thinking about themselves.
That's right. That's great. From a practical level, we have two small children, one 7 and one 4, and they've been scheduling play dates on Zoom with their friends, and they laugh and play as they see each other on Zoom, and that's been fun. And as a father with my son, we've been going over verses and memorizing verses. And he's been doing an excellent job in that. And I'm home to do that with him now. So we're trying to redeem this evil time, and we're doing that. So we sit down, and our son can read and write 5 languages. And so he is learning the verses in the 5 languages by heart. And then we're doing videos and putting them on YouTube, so the people that speak those languages can hear the verses. So we're trying as a family.
Well, that's wonderful. And the more time we can spend with our kids during this time, teaching them, training them, enjoying their company, listening to their stories, telling them stories, I think that's so important, because when do you have time like that? I mean, most people are so busy, they just don't have the time. But right now we do. Yeah. So to redeem the time, as you've said, is really critical right now if you want to have an impact on your family. Yeah. Some families, they do the default thing and go to Netflix and all that kind of stuff. And what they're really doing is they're wasting their time instead of redeeming it. Yeah. And so let's make a point as believers to redeem the time truly and make it worthy of our Savior,
Yeah.
who is wonderful. And
I have a question. What about teenagers? You know, a lot of them are missing prom, they're missing graduation, they're having birthdays, no friends are coming over. You know, even in our own family back in the United States, there's people that, you know, just weren't able to have the party. What do you have any advice for the teenagers?
Yeah, I was reading that the police had broke up a 16-year-old's birthday party because they had too many people there. It's happening all over the nation. So they're really young people should weather this better, I think, than most people, because they have a history of social media that they grew up with since they were 2. They know the way you can reach your friends, but you have to have some goals in mind when you are in a crisis. Nobody wants to go and talk about the crisis. You want to encourage your friends. You want to let them know that you're praying for them, let them know that you care about them. And if they need anything, you'll try to get help to them, and, you know, just make sure they're all right. And if they're not doing good emotionally, then spend some extra time with them on social media. So I think we can use that social media, especially teenagers, can use it in a real effective way of helping their Christian friends and their unbelieving friends as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. You know, I've seen an increase in Bible studies, prayer meetings through Zoom, and that, you know, it's unprecedented. And a lot of young people I've seen are joining these new prayer groups, Bible study groups. So there's a lot of things that they can be involved in that way, as you said. That's great.
Well, we've got to encourage them to do it, you know, because sometimes they might not think of some of the things that there are available out there because they're used to doing different kinds of medias. But we can direct them to redeem their time as well.
Do you have any advice for these single people that are all over the world right now that have to stay in an apartment or a home? They can't leave and they're by themselves. Maybe they have a pet, maybe, but that's it. What do you have for those guys?
Well, I think this is a situation where we have to occupy our mind with good things. And, you know, the more time we have, the more the enemy tries to get in and get us thinking about things that aren't just right. And so it's a time to really get in the Word of God and immerse yourself into good literature, the Bible, a good time to get in some good prayerful habits. Maybe you've neglected those closet prayers for a long time. Now you have some time to set some new goals for that and see them come to fruition during this time. So, and again, young people need to reach out to others who might be struggling. They know their friends who struggle with issues. They can call them and make sure that they're accountable for their time and trying to do the right things during this isolation.
Yeah, that's good. Last thing that I'd like to talk about is that there are many families that our family, my wife, Dr. Lisa Pursley, her family, and back in New York, and many families here, they have family members working in the medical field right now. And there's some difficulties for these families, things that they're having to face that they've never faced before. Let me give one example. And my wife, her sister is a nurse. Her father is a surgeon in a hospital there in Rochester, New York. And her sister, the nurse, has been struggling because she's got 2 small children. And her mother usually takes care of the children during when she's at work. And now her she's a high risk person. She's a little older, has some lung problems. So now she's completely not able to see her children and her grandchildren. And the nurse is a little afraid to be working with these coronavirus patients because she doesn't want to take anything that she's exposed to back to her family. And I know, and you can talk about your daughter, my sister, Dr. Sarah Pursley, who's a medical doctor that's having to work right now at the same. What do you have any advice for these situations?
Well, I think the first thing I would say is you're probably not going to get much sympathy from the hospitals you work in. They just want a warm body in there to see the patients, and that's what you're there for. That's your calling. But to take every precaution you possibly can take. I read yesterday that one of the things they found is on the floors of the hospital, a lot of the coronavirus is right on the floors, and it gets onto the shoes, and they take it home with them. So to wear those little booties when you go to work, and to take them off when you get to the house, to immediately put your clothes in the wash, to keep everything very clean, to protect your family. Right. And some of the hospitals, like right now, our daughter, your sister, is working actually in a tent in front of the hospital where they're seeing people that have symptoms. And so the hospital is kind enough to give them rooms in a hotel so they don't have to go home to their family during this time. But that's difficult too, because you're missing the enjoyment of being with your family after a long, hard day of stress. So to do some things physically, some walking, some exercise, those normal routines that maybe you had to do outside, maybe you'll have to do some inside now. But keep the body moving, and that helps the endorphins and keeps you in a better spirit. And then trust the Lord for your place in this virus thing. I mean, God's put you in a spot where you're helping others. There's no better spot to be in the world than in the middle of your calling, doing what God's will is for your life.
That's a good advice for those, because they were appointed for this time to be in the healthcare world. That's exactly right.
And I love the way the churches are coming around them and praying for them, going out in their cars, honking in their horns, and letting them know there's a whole group of Christians in every hospital, from churches, local churches, that are praying for the healthcare workers and the emergency workers and those that have to be at work, even the police who are having to go out and break up these birthday parties. So we should be praying for all of our government, especially our president at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about, last thing was about health, and you just mentioned it. I thought this is really important. You owned a fitness center for so many years. I grew up in that gym, working out and training people and learning how to do that. And that is something that was instilled in us from a young age, obviously, because I grew up in a gym, because you owned one, as long as being a counselor. And one of the things that just for me and my wife, so she wakes up in the morning and she does her workouts on video, and I do my workouts in the house. And that is one thing that people can do, if they're not able to get out. I do suggest that people have some kind of a workout routine, because that really, like you said, and you understand that better from a psychological perspective, why working out and being active as much as possible is important. Do you have a few words you can say on that?
Well, there's been so many studies that indicate that people are just mentally healthier if they do aerobic exercise and anaerobic exercise. I mean, you're just healthier. You feel better about yourself. You feel better about the world you live in. And it's just the way God's made our bodies. In the New Testament, Jesus and his disciples walked everywhere they went, and it was long walks. And Joanna and I take prayer walks now. And those are just a form of great exercise. So if you're able to get out and walk in a rural area, I would certainly recommend doing that, and praying for your family, praying for extended family, praying for your friends, your church members, relatives. I mean, get involved while you're getting your exercise in the spiritual aspect of this too.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you for the time, Dad. It was great seeing you through
Good to see you.
the internet, and we can do this video together. And I look forward. We'll be doing many more videos to come. And those that are watching, I just want you to be aware that we'll be doing a lot of videos on a lot of different subjects. On finances, on education, on government. My father's written several books, and we'll do some interviews specifically on some of his books that he's written. One is on finances here, and we'll talk about that. He's got another one on marriage. So we have a lot more to come, and you'll be introduced to Dr. Lisa and Dr. Sarah, and they'll have some other different topics to talk about. So God bless you all. Stay safe, healthy during this coronavirus isolation time that we're all experiencing globally as a community, shared global experience. And any last words?
Yeah, be sure and watch your pastor, via the internet, and make sure that you give your tithes and offerings at this time. This is a time when churches' funds are going to go down, and they still got to pay staff and pay missionaries, and so don't neglect your spiritual duties at this time as well. Just stay right on it.
That's good. All right, Dad. Thank you so much, and God bless. Bye.
All right, bye.